Welcome. Welcome. This is the fourth presentation on John, the leader in Ephesus. We are looking at a series of presentations on first century Christian leaders. We're looking at how the church transitioned from eyewitness to apologist from the 30 AD time until 200 CE. This focus, we are looking at John as the leader of Ephesus, and we're going to look at John's timelines after he left Judea and began to lead in Ephesus. Ephesus was, as we mentioned, founded by Paul's ministry and witnesses and other Jewish people coming in. Now let's look at the location of John in Ephesus. If you notice, Ephesus sits as a port. At that time, the port was direct. Now the port is silted over. You saw it occurred probably around 53 AD after the Philippi, Thessaloniki, and Corinthian stays by Paul as he's returning. It's after Antioch as well after, but before probably Colossae, where the Colossians letter was written to. Now, probably from 66 on, Timothy was the elder sent by Paul. John joins him. In that same time period, he meets a young Polycarp. And from 90 to 95, while he's exiled to Patmos, he writes the Revelations to 7 churches in the area: Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergam, Thyatira, which actually, remember, was the home city of Lydia, who we met in Acts 16, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. Sometime after he writes the 3 epistles, he writes the Gospel of John. So he writes first Revelations, probably the epistles, and then John. He does this at the late time after he's returned from his exile. So let's look where Patmos was. Here's Ephesus on the seacoast. Patmos is a sea island. So they picked him up, they put him on a small island, and they left him in the middle of the sea. That's where he was to stay, and that kept him out of preaching in the other large cities: Corinth, Smyrna, Sardis, Philadelphia, Laodicea. And that's an indication of the Romans. And perhaps this map can show you how small it is and how the countryside is. You see that in many cases this is mountainous and rivers going into the sea. That's a current map of how it looks today, including the cloud cover. Now let's look at the history of Ephesus. During Nero's rule, Nero as the emperor of Rome, Nero's wanton spending impacts the empire. So as Paul is visiting with the elders, and Nero is spending money, he goes from a generally cautious emperor at the beginning till killing off many people and spending on lavish circuses, bread and circus, all sorts of fancy parties, but he doesn't keep Rome under control, and the business interests in Rome fail. So he comes on to death. But prior to his death, Paul writes to the Ephesians. Paul and Peter die in Rome, and John joins Timothy. So in the midst of it, this is some of the ruins of Ephesus. Ephesus would have looked like a large theater, lots of coliseums. You would see an agora. You would see a large library. You would have Hadrian's temple that was built. There would be monuments and multiple agoras because it was a huge city. And here's the stadium and the Temple of Artemis that caused so much problem for Paul, and the ancient harbor, which was basically dug in to bring the river down to the Middle States. So John's living in this place. The Ephesus that you'll see has public toilets, public baths, large stadiums. It was a modern. So what we see next, we're going to look at who John influenced to pass on the time. We're going to look at how Polycarp affected Irenaeus. We're going to look at how he interacted with Ignatius of Antioch as one of the other leaders, how he influenced other people such as Justin Martyr as a philosopher to speak for it, how he interacted with Clement, who had traveled with Paul and was also interacting with Corinth and Ephesus. So we'll pick that up in the next video. Thank you very much.